lot of money coming into the household that led to a good deal of instability in her childhood.
This is what I was looking for!
So Kayla was always searching for someone to give her attention, to show they cared about her.
Though the neighborhoods their meager income affords them are infected with crime, the 12-year-old manages to feed that hunger in other ways.
She was doing good in school, getting fairly good grades. She was involved in her church.
2 years later, the longing is so brutal that the now high school freshman falls into the adolescent arms of 16-year-old Darius Sharp.
And so she gets involved with a young man who really kind of becomes the center of her world. When he smoked, she smoked. And when he cut school, she cut school.
When someone has a lack of role models in their lives, it becomes very easy for them to choose a particular person that they now want to be able to imitate, or what they see as being successful or being cool.
Within a few months, she finds herself following in her young parents' footsteps when she becomes pregnant at 14.
Kayla eventually had a child with this person. It was another complicating factor in her already complicated life.
By the time she's 16, the father of her daughter is long gone, leaving the young mom to care for her toddler on her own, barely scraping by.
Life for Kayla was tough. She was raising this child. She was still in the household with her parents. Her sister also had 2 children.
She didn't have much money to go anywhere, she didn't have a job, and she didn't have any support from her family. So all she did was go to school online and raise her child.
After a grueling school year, Kayla welcomes summer break with open arms. And love is in the hot Georgia air when she starts dating a man she meets online, 20-year-old Nathaniel Vivian.
He works part-time at a grocery store. He likes to play video games. He had his own place. He was stable in a way that Kayla wasn't.
Nathaniel represented a lot of positive things. He accepted her, gave her attention.
The relationship quickly gets serious when her new guy reveals his soft spot for little ones.
He seems to embrace the fact that she has a daughter. So she is allowed to sort of date and interact with him and also, include her daughter in that.
Over the next 2 months, the young lovers are inseparable. But Kayla's happiness is eclipsed when tensions at home hit a breaking point.
There was one evening where she was doing the dishes. Her father comes in. They began to argue about the finances, the living conditions, and it just escalated from there.
And in the course of that ordeal, Kayla's father told her that she could either essentially get with the program or get out. And she opted to get out.
Otherwise empty-handed, the teen grabs her child and walks out the door, never to return.
She has essentially no family to go to. She is completely on her own.
Desperate, the 16-year-old runs to the only safe place she knows.
At that point, Kayla calls Nathaniel and he welcomes in her and her daughter.
But within weeks, their distressful reality sets in.
Kayla and Nathaniel's situation becomes more and more desperate. There's no additional money coming into the house. Nathaniel's paying for Kayla and the baby to eat. He's paying for their housing, and things become financially desperate.
When a person now begins to depend on someone else completely, it now becomes easier for them to just follow whatever the mandates or dictates of that other person is.
By the end of the month, they've burned through every dollar before paying his landlord, forcing the man of the house to act fast to take care of his instant family.
In order to make the rent and to pay his bills, Nathaniel decides to sell his game console.
It was a big sacrifice because it was something he enjoyed using.
He decided that he was going to rob someone else of their game console, and he asked Kayla to help him.
Rob somebody.
Kayla agreed, I'm sure, to go along with this because she felt responsible for Nathaniel losing the game console that he had. And she felt beholden to Nathaniel for the fact that he was taking care of her.
The fear of losing someone may cause a person to do something they wouldn't do in the first place.
But the illicit plan doesn't come naturally to the untrained schemers.
Kayla and Nathaniel had no experience committing previous crimes.
They sort of turned to the internet for the how-to for completing this crime. And so Kayla and Nathaniel, after doing all this online research, would text each other back and forth about the plan and what they'd found.
Next, they hunt for their prey.
So once Kayla and Nathaniel felt prepared to commit the perfect robbery, they then went to a buy and sell website where they began to look at sellers of the gaming console that Nathaniel wanted.
And that's where they find the ideal target, 28-year-old Daniel Zeitz.
Daniel is a very well-respected and known gamer in the gaming community, and he had the exact console that Nathaniel wanted.
He was asking $280 for the video gaming console.
Determined to attract the gamer's undivided attention, Nathaniel responds to Daniel's post in an email, telling him exactly what he wants to hear.
He didn't attempt to negotiate, but told Daniel that he would accept his very first selling price. Nathaniel made arrangements with Daniel to meet outside of his apartment complex to purchase the gaming console.
With the plan on lock, the 16-year-old is ready to help her boyfriend rob the seller blind. It's after 9 p.m. on a Friday in September when Nathaniel puts his gun in the glove compartment in preparation to meet Daniel. Everything's ready to go, except for one small complication.
Kayla has nowhere to take her daughter, so she and Nathaniel actually put her into the car at their apartment complex and set off together, the three of them, to go and rob Daniel.
Nathaniel is driving, Kayla is sitting in the passenger seat, her baby is actually in the back seat of the car.
Bringing your own child into the middle of an illegal action or dangerous situation, I believe, may speak volumes about the mother in that she didn't realize how dangerous of a situation it was in the first place.
The family drives 15 miles to the apartment in Sandy Springs, where Daniel is set to meet them at any second. While waiting, they make their final preparation.
Nathaniel owned a gun legally, and the plan was to use that gun to scare the victim into complying with their request.
Nathaniel gives Kayla his gun, and she puts it in between her legs and has it ready to use if the need arises.
As if on cue, Daniel appears with the goods.
Daniel walks up to the driver's side and shows Nathaniel the gaming console. At that point, Nathaniel attempts to grab the gaming console out of Daniel's hands.
But the aggressive move is unexpectedly matched.
Daniel was going to keep his property at all costs. He was not going to let go.
The vicious tug of war takes Kayla by surprise.
Kayla sees the struggle between Nathaniel and Daniel, and it's a pretty violent struggle. Like, they are really sort of going at it.
As they were struggling for the gaming console, Kayla begins to panic.
The 16-year-old clutches the gun in her lap and quickly points it toward the action, pulling the trigger.
She struck Nathaniel in the hand, and then the bullet went through Nathaniel's hand and then entered into the side of Daniel's chest.
The 28-year-old falls to the ground, while the couple frantically speeds away with the game system.
At this point, neither Kayla or Nathaniel knew Daniel's status. They knew he had been shot, but they did not know whether he was alive or dead.
Inside the speeding car, the bloodbath continues.
Her daughter's in the back seat. Nathaniel's bleeding all over the place, so it just had to have been crazy.
When someone you love is hurt, what happens is the adrenaline is released into your system. You are into fight or flight in regard to your responses, and you're not thinking about anything other than pure survival.
The escaped killers hightail it to an emergency room 10 minutes away in Brookhaven. where Nathaniel's gunshot wound comes into question.
Authorities want to know, how did Nathaniel get shot? Kayla and Nathaniel crafted a story that they were robbed by some people in an apartment complex, and Kayla shot the assailants to defend her boyfriend.
The police checked to see whether or not there had been any reports of shots fired in that area, and of course there had not been.
Meanwhile, Sandy Springs police officers are dispatched to the apartment building parking lot after a neighbor heard the late-night shot. But 28-year-old Daniel Zeitz has already met his fate.
When authorities arrived on the scene, they saw Daniel's body and his gunshot wound, and Daniel was pronounced dead on arrival.
Daniel's family suffered a horrific, unimaginable, tremendous loss. Daniel was loved. He was a beloved son and friend.
He was well known in those communities as just somebody really happy, someone who they were all gonna miss.
The tragedy instantly turns into a murder investigation.
They immediately start to investigate, to try to figure out what happened and to process all of the evidence at the crime scene.
And at the same time, Nathaniel and Kayla were having to report their crime to the Brookhaven Police Department.
Once homicide detectives get wind of a gunshot wound being treated at a nearby emergency room, they follow the lead to the hospital to question the patient and his girl.
It was like 3 or 4. They pulled out a gun, and like my first instinct was to grab it out the glove compartment, and I think I pulled the trigger.
The 16-year-old denies that she and her man had anything to do with Daniel's death, but experienced investigators don't buy it.
She was laying around with it in the car, like flicking with the trigger. I didn't personally see because I was driving, and then it just went off.
Kayla and Nathaniel told different stories. They appeared to be confused, and the stories kept changing.
They had no contingency plan for if the crime went wrong, what would the story be? So everything crumbled at that time.
Kayla's steadfast loyalty to her boyfriend hits a dead end.
We went to this guy's house, and they got all the parts, and I just pulled it out and shot him. I don't know. I think I shot the guy.
They confessed that they had agreed to meet him there for the purchase of a game console with the intent to rob him. And Kayla actually confessed to her role and told the police that she was the one who shot Daniel.
As she surrenders her innocence, her daughter is torn away from her, while she and Nathaniel are arrested.
For Kayla, because of the nature of the charges, her very harsh reality was that she was going to be charged and prosecuted as an adult, even though she was only 16 years old.
It's really unbelievable. Other 16-year-olds are worrying about a prom dress or, you know, who likes me on social media. And Kayla's faced with the ramifications of this horrific crime that she committed and how that will impact not just herself, but also her daughter.
The young mom and her 20-year-old boyfriend are charged with murder and aggravated assault, facing life in prison. A year and a half later, on what's to be the first day of Kayla's trial, the now 18-year-old suddenly chooses to accept a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Nathaniel.
She decided that she had to start looking out for herself, that she could not continue to put Nathaniel before herself anymore. Her life was literally on the line.
It's really difficult to turn on that person that you have